Good morning. It's always great to be at the Serverless Days conference. I was going to ask two questions, but I think Julian already stole my first question, so I'm not asking. If you are new to serverless, if you are here to learn about serverless today, please, I encourage you to talk to others, because you may hear 6 or 7 stories on stage, but there are plenty out there. So keep the interaction going and learn from each other. So I'll ask my second question. Who was here, not here, in Belfast for the previous Serverless Days conference? All right, quite a few. So that time, I talked about speed. So how can you migrate something faster using serverless? Now, 3 years is a very tiny time, but so many things happened during the 3 years' time, right? Now, if we go back few more years, we had mainframes. Now they're still around, right? So dinosaurs long gone, but mainframes still there. Now things moved on. So we came across virtual machines. They kind of revolutionized the whole thing and brought us to cloud and serverless. Wonderful. What happened? Technology evolved, and beyond that is the change. Okay? Change happens all the time. So in technology, it happens faster. We say that change is constant, but if you look at the evolution of technology, it's fast. So 3 years is nothing compared to the evolutionary change, but for technology, it's huge. Why does it happen? Because of us. We demand more. To satisfy us, technology innovates, evolves. So they bring up with new technologies, we demand more. So there's a constant cycle going on, like Dave, Mike, and Mark said, the flywheel effect. It keeps on churning all the time. So the innovation and change are critical to any business, more so in the modern days. So if your organization thinking of adopting serverless, the number one thing is to accept change. So if you don't have the mindset, it is difficult. Going back a few years, 2016, 2017, so Lego.com had a legacy platform. Number of issues, failures, downtimes, etc., etc. So we wanted change. Now, we heard so many things happening on the cloud. So that's, again, change. We wanted to change to have a better infrastructure, better offering to our customers, take it to more children and adults all around the world. So we took risk. So as part of that, this happened. 2019, Lego.com was moved to serverless. I talked millions of times about this one. Now, when we did this migration, we built on a composable architecture. So there are 3 layers. So you have the typical web, the browser side, the backend for front end, and of course, the serverless backend. If you think serverless is not good enough for customer-facing, client-facing applications, look here. The backend, 100% serverless. So that means you go through, browse product, put things on your basket, paying for your products, confirming or placing your order, everything handled behind the scenes by serverless microservices. Now, moving on. Number 2, you need to be able to see domains or understand domains and structure your organization in such a way that you can control things as you evolve. So this is, of course, from domain-driven design. The blue color is just a choice. I didn't realize, it represents the blue book. But there we go. So recently there was a survey from O'Reilly. And if you look at it, the companies who are, kind of newly adopting serverless are the one kind of partly successful. There is a reason. Because when we, sort of set up a team to do serverless, this is pretty much we end up with. Because of many reasons, right? Because we are all kind of enthusiastic to develop serverless. Lambda function is easy. Deploying one is so easy. Deploying the second one is just piece of cake. So we keep on going. So we built some kind of a tangled architecture or a lambda pinball architecture, as ThoughtWorks says, and I call this as a ball of serverless mud. It doesn't matter whether it's a big ball or small ball, it is mud after all. So don't get into this situation. This is the reason why we need to see domains. So MCT is the bigger department I belong. This is part of the wider digital technology organization at the Lego Group. So it has three main areas. So the Lego.com and the whole ecosystem around it. Then we have the retail stores and all the IT operations in there. And of course, the customer support center with all the high-tech technologies they use. Now, if you look at the split of domains, there are 5 domains. I'm not going to name them, but 5 domains. Now, each domain has number of subdomains. You get the picture where I'm going, right? So break things down to the level that you can manage. Now, when we get to subdomains, obviously, you see boundaries, or you can see the things that you can group together. What you get to bounded context. So I for simplicity, I put just a single bounded context in each subdomain. Doesn't need to be. You can't have multiple bounded contexts. When you have the boundaries, it becomes easier to manage. So what do? You assign teams, ownership. So smaller teams, 2 pizza or a single pizza, depending on your team's appetite. So it becomes easier, okay? Because you have ownership, each team focuses on one thing only. And then, of course, when you have a team, you think of building microservices. I mean, of course, not necessarily everything is going to be microservices. You will have web apps and various other things, but you get the idea. Now, when you come to this level of granularity, it really helps because you have a boundary, you have services to protect the boundary, represent a smaller model, and then you have interaction mechanism via APIs. You communicate via events, event-driven, asynchronous. They all come into part of it. So things really kind of, become easier. You start to see number of microservices talked about across the organization. And the third one, you need to grow teams. Now, a famous author once said, if you want to grow your company, the company should grow you. Okay? Because without that, it's not going to happen. Typically, what happens with the serverless adoption is like companies are pressured to get into serverless. They don't have enough skills internally, so they hire experts, consultants, right? So they bring from, all over the place, and they build the product. Okay? The product's been built, what they do, they disperse them. So they don't need, because they cost money, right? Consultants are expensive, of course. Now, the tricky thing is, because they see some success, they keep repeating this pattern. So they hire, assemble, do something, and disperse. The thing is, there are poor engineers in your organization sitting around becoming just onlookers. They don't get any part to play in this serverless journey your company is doing. What happens? The consultants leave. Your employees pick up the pieces, become maintainers, the most demotivated team you can find in an organization. Now, this happens. They just keep repeating. Now, the problem is, in such organizations, there is no people growth, there is no team growth, and of course, no organization growth, and serverless also is not going to grow. So this needs to change. So if for that, you need to provide an environment for growth. You need to trust your engineers, provide them the space. Of course, they will make mistakes. You'll be slow. You need to be able to understand, but they learn from the mistakes, and slowly the innovation, the flywheel will kick in. So you need to provide them the nourishment. So that means, the training or the resources and conferences like this to learn from each other. All these things should be part of it. So to give you an example, before that, so to me, serverless engineers are composers, because you are composing your application using number of managed serverless services to bring together. You already heard code liability a lot today. That's exactly the reason why I don't consider them as code factories, because they need to be architects, they need to be DevOps engineers, they need to be a diverse engineering team. That's how the serverless team should be. Now, I mentioned this, MCT. So back in 2018, when we started the serverless revolution, so we only had 2 teams, and then it grew. Now I think over 25 or 30 squads, because it's easier now. We have the domain split, and we know exactly the subdomains and bounded contexts. If there is a new requirement to develop a new product, easy to set up a smaller team and give them the ownership, and they kind of work that way. Right. So the next one. You need to, have your cloud provider. So I know it's, it's not a wedding ceremony, but it's a serverless conference. But read that again. The reason I'm saying is due to this. There is so much talk about vendor. So vendor is like someone sells fruit and veg, right? I know Peter saying or thinking, oh, but by the way, my cloud provider also sells fruit and veg and groceries. Of course. So in that case, it's a perfect match. And the reason I'm saying is like, if you consider your provider as a partner, there is so much opportunity for you two to work together to grow serverless. And if you've been through this journey, you know that the number of opportunities you get, working with your cloud provider as a partner. So there is a help with reviewing architecture or working with planning for your, high peak events and things like that become part of the whole, the partnership collaboration. And finally, are you sustainable? Are you thinking of, developing a product sustainably? When I talk about sustainability, it's not just about, the cloud or the green environment and things like that. Organizations usually have, their, the green promise and the targets, and they have the strategies to move towards that. But for me, when it comes to, the sustainability in serverless, there are 3 things: products, process, and the cloud. The reason I'm saying is like, you need to have sustainable products developed using sustainable processes and operated in a sustainable way in the cloud. And that is very important. So you may be asking, what is a sustainable product? Sustainable product is something you can keep on growing, keep on evolving. It's not something you develop once and then ditch it or push into maintenance. No, it's an incremental and iterative way of evolving the product. For that, you need to have a composable architecture, you need to have modularity, you need to have event-driven observability. All these things should be part of the development process. So that's where the sustainable development processes come in. So it's like an interplay of people, processes, and products, and how you kind of make use of them to build sustainable products and operate them in a sustainable way in the cloud. Now, don't need to go through all these things, a bunch of things. You may be familiar with, many of these things. There's some of the processes or best practices you can follow. Then, of course, it gets to the sustainable cloud. So this, again, a partnership between yourself and your cloud provider. So cloud provider has, their part, and, we as consumer have our own part to play in the sustainable cloud environment. So there are a number of best practices around. I'm not going to go through all these things. It's completely a different talk. So just one thing, data, if you think of data and storage as a, best practice, most of you must be familiar with the DynamoDB, right? You all create DynamoDB tables for various reasons. And how many of you leave many tables unattended? Because they don't, have many data or much data, so it doesn't cost you anything. We just leave them, right? It doesn't bother you, so we move on. But somewhere, somebody is holding a space for those tables, right? So that is the thinking that you need to be, bring in when you think of, sustainability. And of course, the first and the foremost pattern when it comes to sustainability in cloud is serverless first. To close, just a recap. accepting and ready to change as part of the technology evolution is important and crucial. And the second thing is break down your domain and have the visibility of the granular level where you can operate. It becomes so much easier to control and guard your products and the boundaries. And growing engineers, of course, it's completely a must for any organization. Especially in modern technologies, things are changing every day. It is a struggle to keep up. That is the reason why you need to, have that sort of mindset created. Just to give an example, I know an engineer who joined a year ago from the front-end focused background. No knowledge, nothing about serverless. He came to the team. He was given the opportunity to learn while on the job, but most important part was he had that mindset to change the focus from his previous way of doing things into serverless. And he's been kind of, growing along. He can now tackle, massive step function state machines and all sorts of things. The last week and this weekend, he messaged me to say that I've been accepted as the AWS, the community builder. He's not a, experienced, finished article. He is just starting his serverless journey, and there is a, kind of future ahead. So that is what I'm saying about, growing engineers and giving the, the resources and the time to, become better. And of course, to unlock your, the vendor lock-in fear, I can talk for, the entire day about this. So make sure that you make most use of your cloud provider. And sustainability is not just about the environmental sustainability, it's also about your product sustainability, your process sustainability. And of course, think of the future, where it's going. Technology is always evolving. That's all today. Thank you so much.